What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. Today, we're welcoming Rana to the podcast. Rana is the visionary behind SOLIS, transforming beauty, hygiene, and sustainability with her innovative brush sanitizer. Rana, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Where are we?
We are in my parents' hair salon.
Tell me about your parents' hair salon. How did you grow up at the hair salon?
Yeah, essentially, I always like to joke that I was born here, but my dad, he started in the 1990s and then grew it there. He started with the first one in West Hills and then went from there to Shaughnessy to 130th Ave. So it's our last salon because he's now 71 and ready to retire. So he says.
So he says.
Yeah.
Do you think growing up in that environment, having entrepreneurial parents, shaped a part of you at all?
I think the business savviness of it all, I think the troubleshooting any problem, I think there was always this mentality around if you like never be afraid of a situation, just kind of approach it with like, what can we do? And who do we need to call to help us? Because we might not be the person to solve it, but we definitely know that we have resources around us and yeah, a community based in the city.
I love that mentality of who can we call to help us? I think too many people think they can just do it on their own, and that's obviously a mistake.
You could try, and there's a lot of times that you are successful, but I mean, back in that time, it was, you didn't have access to the internet, you didn't know how to do things, so there's always like, a guy, there's always a guy that you know, so yeah, it's always about, picking up the phone and asking for help for sure.
So how did SOLIS come to be?
SOLIS came to be because my parents never wanted, I grew up with 3 brothers, and so they never wanted any of us to kind of operate in the business just because in order to be really successful in the space, you really had to be the person doing the work and the labor. So 6 days a week, 11-hour days. Wasn't exactly what my parents wanted for us. They wanted us to kind of be a little bit more secure, have health insurance and do all these things. So they always recommended we go into like the health sciences or any sort of engineering or computer science. So they pushed us in that direction, but the more and more I would leave that space, the more and more I came back, like I wanted to be here. So I had an opportunity to manage one of the salons in Shaughnessy, stayed there for a few years, and then when we, sold it, it was this moment of like happiness, and at the same time realizing that I wanted to still stay in this space and not actually grow the industry speciality. So one of the things I actually started to do was approach bridal hair and makeup, because that was just an area back in the early 2000s. Like people were very afraid to do that. And I'm like, this is a niche that no one has tapped into yet. We should offer these on location services. And when we started doing that, I think my dad thought I was a little crazy. And then he started to realize that it was actually a really good revenue opportunity.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's, shot weddings and that sort of thing, it seems so standard now, like 20 years later, that there are on-location services. Do you think you were always, keen on identifying opportunities like that?
Yeah, I think naturally, out of all my siblings, I think that there's 2 of us that just, we are creative in that space. So I think the creativity from my parents and the business kind of expertise that both my parents have, it's about kind of not being comfortable where you are, and not in a bad way of like you're always seeking the next thing, but I think in terms of what brings us joy is actually discovering, what is the latest technique. My dad still at 71 is like watching the latest and greatest hair shows and like the weirdest cuts and stuff. So he's always been we'd love to learn. I think that's the other thing too, and it doesn't matter what sort of speciality it is. It's like we want to know what politically is happening, what's happening, in the hair space, but also what's happening in architecture. So we want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. So you start doing weddings on location, and
it went great. And one of the big things was that I would come home and literally have all these brushes to clean, because I worked in healthcare for a while, and when I worked in healthcare, I was always very afraid of like the sanitation. So I was always naturally a very big clean freak. And then when I went to like healthcare, it was working at the hospitals, working at the family clinics. It was very evident that I love to have a very clean space. And when I was doing hair and makeup, it was always like extra brushes, extra techniques, scooping it like a scalpel, and then making sure that nothing touched anything. So I think one of the biggest compliments we have, even in the hair salon here and then at the on location services, was, oh my God, your kit is so clean. It's like, it has to be, because it's applying it right to your face, and it's like your biggest day. So we want to make sure that everything is perfect. So it looks perfect, but it's also applied in like the healthiest, safest way.
Yeah, definitely. So,
And that's how SOLIS kind of came about, because I was watching and washing all these brushes, and then I didn't want to do it anymore. So I'm like, how do we bring hospital grade sanitation into the beauty space? Because this is a lot of time wasted, time where you're not earning any money and you're having to do kind of like all the hard labor. And then you have to wait 24 hours for those brushes to dry. So the next day I literally had a set that I couldn't use. So I had like thousands of dollars worth of brushes. I think every artist literally has thousands of dollars worth of brushes. And it's like, how do we do this so that it's more economical? It's incredibly more sustainable. And then it's actually attacking sort of bacterial, fungal, and viral pathogens that could commonly happen on the face. So,
wow.
yeah.
So you have this idea that, this is an inefficient way of doing things.
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
what's the next step?
So 2018, literally looking at like patents and research and hospital grade, technologies, what was sanitizing, what was being utilized in that area. And we discovered sort of UVC. And in 2019, COVID happened, and it was like a perfect time for us. It was like everything kind of stopped, and it was a really good time for us to be able to be like, okay, let's put this to, like, let's actually make what we've been talking about. Let's 3D, like, buy the 3D printer, learn how to solder, circuit breaker this stuff, use a lot of Gorilla Tape, and build it. It was like, we called it the ugly baby. I am looking back at it now. There were some definite learning curves, but again, it goes back to the whole, like, we're not afraid to kind of discover and learn, like, how to 3D print and render images and burn our fingertips a little bit along the way and figure out a name, and in doing that. So we started to create it, and then we utilize actually one of a previous, called a friend, and they said, where can we actually manufacture this? Like, we can 3D print at our house, but like, we actually need to scale what this would look like. And we actually reached out to Red Deer Polytechnic, and they supported us through the engineering piece. We had our first beta. And then from there, we said, okay, well, what's next? And I felt really alone in the process at one point. And so I asked one of my advisors there, where do I go? And she suggested I go through like the Central Alberta Innovation Network. And then I went from there to Alberta Catalyzer, and kind of discovered that the startup world is really big in the city, and there's a huge community of like very supportive individuals and very smart people that you can like surround yourself with.
Yeah, definitely. So many things to dive into there, but you mentioned that you felt alone in the process. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think naturally when you have a business or you're starting a business, it's always like you have this great idea. You are confident in the concept, right? Like, when you really do let go and actually try to build something. But there are moments of self-doubt. I think everyone can feel that experience. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Is this the wrong choice for me? And I think naturally you're just like, no, it's all okay. It's just a matter of like a fear tactic, maybe not enough sleep, but feeling alone in the process of like not sharing or troubleshooting yourself, like being able to, I think one of the biggest things through the Startup Network is that you can actually, reach out to individuals and say, talk about the problem, not necessarily like seeking advice or actually a solution, but just in the sense of sharing that experience, because your family can help you in certain ways, but I think also like they don't understand. They are very encouraging, and sometimes they're not. Because I think even my dad was like, is this going to be okay? Like, are you okay? Is this going to be successful? And I'm like, and this is why we don't share until we actually can scale. But there's always those moments where you're wondering what you're doing, and the loneliness can sometimes seep in a little bit, but you just need to kind of like ground yourself with people, like-minded people, or just simply like step away from it, go on a hike, go for a walk, do something.
Definitely. Yeah, and community 100% helps with that, and we'll get into that too. But when you were doing the wedding side of things, did you feel the same way, or was that unique to when you started SOLIS?
It was very unique to starting SOLIS. I think I finally understood what my dad was experiencing when we were kids, growing up, and how to kind of, you know, I think he's an incredible business person, and just to see sort of the commitment and the tenacity he has, and just showing up every day. I think when we first built the 130th store, it was like my first day working with him officially, and he's like, "Don't worry, they'll come." And I'm like, "Oh my God, we just built like a $500,000 salon, and there's like one customer." And he's like, "Don't worry, like they'll come." Sort of like that belief of in himself, and just kind of like what it will take for us to build it into, a scalable, operating like, what are we now, 26 years at this store? So it's been pretty cool.
Do you think like entrepreneurship in general, you've experienced it through several facets. Do you think it requires some sort of like delusional confidence that like most people don't have?
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, in a lot of ways you just have to do it and kind of not think too hard about it, because the more you think about it, the less likely you'll do it. And then the more doubt you'll have. So I think in a lot of ways, it's just worst case scenario, like you always have to think worst case scenario, as long as I have my health, like we can figure out the rest of it. Like I think I'm pretty capable in a lot of areas that I'm like employable. And you always have to think like, am I employable? Yes. Okay, then I can still go down this endeavor, and then there's always a backup plan. But you don't want to take that backup plan. I think you just have to blindly leap and trust. And I think people see that, so I think even just your original customers, your first customer will actually like appreciate that too.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking about customers, so you have a prototype, your ugly baby, as you called it. I love it. How do you go about finding your first customer?
So through the Alberta Catalyzer, they're incredible. They actually suggested, they do this customer discovery, and I'm like, what is that? So I think that's where it's like the business side of my like parents, how they, troubleshot it in the, back like 20, 40 years ago. It's very different than now. Now there's like more of a system, there's more of a process, whereas like you open a business and you basically advertise with flyers, and I think there's more of a strategy in this world. So it was a matter of customer discovery. We did a lot of sanitation sort of workshops within the area. We pulled out a questionnaire and kind of discovered to see like how many people wash their brushes, what sort of like need was actually being required there, and then just sort of sharing this information and sort of the product that we developed with people. And so I think we actually got approached. That was the first ever customer that we had. We were really interested in your business. We love where this is going. We've been watching you very closely. I think being honest and being like honest where you are in the product development was really key. So it really helped us sort of build that relationship and strengthen like our connection. Yeah.
Did the like production, the initial production, like take longer or shorter than you anticipated?
It's taken very long. Yeah. So you have this, very ambitious goal of like going to market in the next year, and it's, you have these certifications, like you're verging on a medical tech product. What are those sort of security bases you need to have? What are the, the ramifications of a customer? I think engineers call it the shake and bake test. So taking hardware like building hardware is incredibly hard. So I don't suggest it for anyone. It's actually quite, it's been an experience, but we've learned a lot. Like I said, we'd like learn how to like 3D print and render and do all these fun things. But at the same time, it's like keeping you away from the social media aspect, because you're so keyed in on the product development. So yeah, and you kind of like lose a little bit of the research that you miss so much. So I think that's naturally where I like to be in the learning phase, whereas like just build it already. So just being, what's the word? Being the small fish when you're trying to like manufacture, and what we wanted that to look like. So manufacturing in Canada was really, really important to me, specifically in Alberta, because like, born and raised in Alberta, I think I wanted to keep my business and my, keep it within the family business. When I say that, it's like other families and other businesses, and sort of like, profit all together as a community.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned the word community a couple of times, not only from the like incubator kind of like community side of things, but also your family. Why is community important?
I think that's the best way to live, right? I mean, when you feel like you're contributing and you're offering, whether it's like a haircut, I think a lot of people realize that haircuts aren't just haircuts, right? They're these beautiful relationships that you can actually like connect with and share some like experiences. We're like one of the few industries that physically touch our customers. So I think that there's a level of trust that you build in, and I think to see a community grow, it's almost like feeding a garden, and you need to be able to water it and watch other plants along with it grow. So yeah, we've watched some of our customers literally be born. Like I've seen people that are like, they're getting married? And I'm like, what? They were like a baby. They literally came in like as a child. And so to see them now like go to university and then come in and like be like, I'm getting married. And it's like being part of that whole story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And building those relationships from the ground up, right?
Yeah, it's super important, yeah.
You never know who you're going to need to call. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Love it.
Yeah.
So as far as SOLIS is concerned, where are you along the journey?
So we're beta testing now, which is really exciting. We're hoping to host a big launch party in next month, actually. So we're really excited about that. We're planning that secretly. But we're going to some like health conferences. We're doing one of the big, Cosmoprof is one of the big beauty industry like trade shows with the support obviously of the Trade Commissioners of Canada. And we're ready to kind of like hand our product to our customers now. Yeah.
You mentioned regulation there a little bit, and I'm curious because you said a technical beauty product. Is that the correct term? Or?
So we wanted to push SOLIS so that it had this medical capability. I think the next iteration, the next development of SOLIS will actually, that's our hope, that's our goal. And in that there are like certain certifications that we need to qualify for. So we wanted to kind of get ahead of it before we can do that. And so just development, design, and but those are understanding what they are in order to better develop SOLIS's current model.
Do those accreditations or certifications or whatever that all that looks like, are those complications that are kind of thrown into the production side of things, or are they kind of things that you see as mandatory to be able to grow a business?
So I mean, the process is long and it's very expensive. However, I think that to set us apart and to actually like truly stand for what we wanted to believe, we don't want like a knick-knack product or a one-off. We really want to contribute to this industry specifically. I think it's very important to kind of elevate the sanitation space. We were, throughout the pandemic, we were the first people that were closed. We were the last ones to open because of all the health restrictions we had to abide by, even though we're regulated by our provincial and federal health regulators. So it really sent a message to everyone about the sanitation area and what we kind of lacked in the industry. And then how kind of wasteful we were with the single-use disposables. So the certification was kind of saying like, it was our like stamp of saying like, we did this with like full intention of being, safe, but not just like in us saying that it's safe, it's actually like accredited. And I think that's really important to us. It's like the SOLIS sanitation accreditation, I think will be like our future as well.
Do you think that will help with sales as well?
I think so. I think people are realizing that they just don't want, what they're buying, the little gadgets that they have. I think people are a bit more intentional. I think that's also why you see some brands, like for example, like the Dyson Airwrap was built for professionals, but like you now have the everyday consumer wanting, the professional experience at home and understanding. So those types of individuals are understanding the quality that comes, and you just don't want to have like just a drawer of junk and product that was kind of like thing to buy, but it wasn't actually a functional piece.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, because built for professionals but then used personally. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've thought about for SOLIS, as far as professionals using it like you were in the wedding industry, and then but also individuals at home?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a really key piece, because I think you're also starting to notice too is that people are really suffering with their skin. So there's a big, concern about what the products are being formulated, how they're being formulated, and how that's actually interacting with their personal skin. So for SOLIS's future is not only to sanitize, but also to analyze. So we want to be able to actually see what's interacting on that brush. And is that product actually that you're using, that everyone's kind of recommended, whether it's on TikTok or social media, is it actually valuable to you, and how is it actually valuable to you? So what sort of benefits are you kind of seeing? So it's not just again, like a drawer full of products that's like useless because it made you break out or made you, suffer like repeated cold sores, whatever it is. I think those are the key pieces of what we're trying to build here.
What has been the hardest part about building SOLIS so far?
Oh my gosh. I think that's such a good question because I look at it, but I think that we've overcome a lot of those challenges. So the hardest part was actually manufacturing. So what did it look like? Because we would pay, X amount of dollars to get a return, to get the, product. We've designed it, we've done all that stuff, but now we need to actually scale. And when we're developing it, so we were getting it back and it was just like, not to the quality that we wanted. We are a beauty product, right? So visually it has to look very beautiful because nobody wants to see certain things on their countertop. Like if it's like, but it works. You're like, no, it doesn't. It can work. It can be like, a functioning unit, but it's not a very aesthetically pleasing unit because we want it to be, there, present on the stations, have a story to it. So that was the hardest part. And then we kind of took the challenge and said, why don't we just manufacture in-house? Do we own manufacturing? What does that look like? What are the costs there? How would it streamline so we're not like the little batch test that, it might come out wrong, and can we actually control quality?
How hard has that proven to be?
I think when we initially thought about it, we're like, this is probably the craziest idea to do. And then when we started doing it, we're like, actually, this is the smartest thing that we've actually thought about, is to own it. And you can run and stop it, and you can, tweak a certain design and be able to actually implement it quickly without having to sort of have a bunch of emails going back and forth, doing new iterations. It's sometimes we just get together on a Sunday evening and we just hash it out, and then you have the new design kind of with the capabilities and stuff. And so we've already kind of troubleshot it with really quickly.
Yeah. Owning that production, I think, is such a unique. It's a unique idea. I think it's something that everybody wants to do, but it's that hard step, right? Like, how do you go about that? How do you go about knowing that every single product is going to be, this one from the next one is the exact same when you own that production at this early stage?
Yeah, but it allows you this flexibility of actually trialing certain, let's say, colors, right? So you can actually give a beta that's gray or black and see what the consumer response is. So I think that's kind of been fun, or personalizing them where you can etch the artist's name in it. And I think that's been kind of, the personalization key pieces that we see in the market today is actually really driving that message. So you can actually iterate. And I think that actually allows us the reassurance. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From some of these early customers that have purchased from you, what has some of the feedback been so far?
So I think the feedback was we tried to make the design very seamless, so it would just close magnetically. And I think intuitively, I thought it was very intuitive. We all did. When you're building something, you're like, of course, this is how it works. And, you build it like that. So we realized that people did not have the same experience. So we watched SOLIS, our ugly baby, many, many times fall to the ground because they would think that they had locked it and sealed it. And in fact, it wasn't the case. So we have more of the adjustments in terms of closure. So functionality, usability, even just let's say the light at the top, the response rate for it. But overall, I think there were key pieces that we actually didn't even pick up on because we were so focused on, parts of manufacturing that were oh, it actually causes some of the stems of the makeup brushes to actually, they themselves, the varnish goes brighter, as if they had just bought it. So I think those were one of the cool feedback, that we never thought to hear, and I think those have been really fun. And then being able to put product in it, so you can actually put lipsticks or any of the eye creams, anything that can go into SOLIS can actually be sanitized as long as proper exposure. So I think that was an exciting feature. So I think the overall response was really positive, and then even from them, you just get these really cool ideas of maybe stacking, or there's ways of implementing new things.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. When you're receiving this feedback, especially things that you wouldn't have anticipated, it's easy to kind of get this shiny new object syndrome where you're, along those lines where you're like, oh, we could do this or we can do this. And then you're kind of going a bunch of different directions. How do you ensure that you're staying true to kind of what you want to do and ensure that you're getting, past MVP stage with the initial idea?
Yeah, That's a good one. I think one of the big things is actually just like having it on the whiteboard and being like, okay, this is the play. You know, when you light it up, you always have to come back to center. And I think sometimes you do get excited about certain things. You have like really awesome meetings, let's say with someone, and you come home and you're like, oh my gosh, this would be such a great idea. We should totally do this thing. But then I think, you know, you let it sit for a bit and then you have to say like, okay, but I need to finish this project line. This is where we come back to, I think, just recentering. And I think visually for me, I need to see it in order to understand it. So I always just look back at my whiteboard and I'm like, this is the goal and we have to stay here for a second before we can pivot. But this is like always something like we can put into the future. So I've been learning that muscle. That's a muscle you need to train.
It's the hardest.
Yeah, I know. It's so hard.
You have a small team, is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. When you were thinking about hiring the first person, you know, the first person for an addition to your team, what was the criteria for that person, and how did you know that it was time to kind of branch out beyond just yourself?
Well, so I think you start to realize that there are people around you that ask you about SOLIS, and you don't realize that they're just they're not asking just to be kind. They're really asking to better understand the business. And I think one of the ones was we were like one of our friends. He was great. He's like, okay, well, you know, I can help you with that because I've done, you know, levels of grant writing and I've worked for a startup before. You know, I can help you with that. And it was just like, how did we not think of this? And we work really, really well together. And I think, honestly, he's much more organized than I am, which is like very hard to find. But in terms of like meeting deadlines and target, it's like, why? It just feels like, it felt really natural in the process. And then we utilized the University of Calgary like Propel project. And I think when we had that student for a little bit of time, it's like, well, once it ends, and he's doing such a great job, like what should we do? And it's like the natural thing was to hire them so that they can further develop what they've already beautifully developed and what we're really happy with. So it's like why we've been lucky in that regard. I think just, you know, having that network and having those conversations and also like expressing to them like the troubles that you've been experiencing. Like, yes, it all looks so glamorous on the social media aspect, but it's not exactly what it is. And so they come over and they see like our house is like utterly chaotic, but it's just like, yes, we've been soldering in this counter, like on this corner here, and that's why the table's burnt. And like this is where we've Gorilla taped some things that shouldn't be Gorilla taped at all. And so yeah, there's a bit of like a happy chaos and organized chaos in the space. And so their inquiry was really like, they were the one that approached us again, and it was really cool to see like, oh yeah, why didn't we think of this? And yeah,
like authentically just wanted to help.
Yeah. And it was like, okay, well, we don't want you to do it for free because I think that this is something that we want to, you know, grow. And then from there, it was just a matter of like, yeah, hiring and doing our first contract and what does that look like? And I think, you know, you do one for the hair salon. I think it looks different. You think you're ready for everything else, but then you do one with that has a bit of like, you know, employee shareholders. How do you structure that? What does that even mean? And when does that, you know, come into play? So understanding those key pieces too.
Talking about like perception, like external perception, you know, you mentioned everything looks so glamorous on social, but you know, your building and your home and your 3D printers and that sort of thing, which is how everything starts, right? Yeah. How do you manage, I suppose, the external kind of pressures, if you will, that might be the wrong word, of maintaining this image that, you know, you're a beautiful product, but you're in early stages and, you know, you just kind of have to do what you need to do to get it done.
Yeah, I think there's always a level of being transparent in that space of like, I think when people ask, I definitely don't be like, oh my God, everything's amazing. We're doing so great. Like, it's just like, everything's good. Obviously, you know, like any business, we're going to have some hiccups. We're going to have some delays in like product delivery. We're going to, you know, push the launch party. Like, we're going to have to do these things. I think that when you are really honest with your, you know, potential customers, or you're really transparent, I think making those connections and building those relationships, there's a lot more grace that's given. I try to, and sometimes I don't try to be on the social media aspect just because I don't want to be inauthentic. And so, but it's like, what part of this business do they want to see? And you have to kind of gauge from there. So I think when it's not to their liking. Sometimes I usually just shy away from the social media aspect, which is probably very, very bad. But I think when you're building something that it has this intention, I think there's a level of, we can't do it all, and there's like energy that you need to put into certain areas. And we can be this beautiful, shiny object, but at the same time, it's like we're also trying to build a business. So we can't always be in every space at the same time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How have you gone about marketing?
I have these beautiful social media, proposals and calendars, and I've used ChatGPT to make them, and they're awesome. And then sometimes I just don't implement. So I think for me, I actually realized that I'm not good at it. I can do it really, really well for the salon, but then there's times for SOLIS. I think it's kind of like, when it's your business, I think there's a hard line where people, like when it's like showcasing your child, like not everyone wants to see your child. Like the Instagram picture of your baby. So I think that there's a level of humility and sort of, the confidence that needs to kind of be built into the space. How have I marketed? What I've done, which Instagram didn't like specifically, was I kicked everybody off of our platform. So I had this like really crazy strategy of like, we really want to target specific key people. So I only want to have relationships. It's kind of like, I utilized it like LinkedIn. I really want to connect with certain accounts, certain individuals that like speak to the messaging. It's not because they're trending. It's purely because they are, they are the ones that are talking about their kit and their sanitation, and not just talking about it because it's like, the hashtag of the day. It's really like important to them. So you doing that, and then just honestly like DMing them and building those relationships. We've had some really awesome conversations with some like incredible people, like, celebrity artists. So it's like, I couldn't believe that they would email me back or even, respond to a message, but it was like them directly, not their management team. And it was like, this is so cool, because the story and the messaging was like, real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, the power of social. You can really talk to anybody you want at any time. It's awesome.
I know. It's kind of crazy.
You mentioned LinkedIn, and I'd like to dive deep on that, because I think there's this like big shift, and it's been happening over years, but specifically recently, where people really are their brand, and it's people buying. I mean, the idea of people buying into people rather than product is obviously well known. How do you feel about that, and how do you kind of carry that out in your personal efforts?
I think that embodies like who we are. I mean, SOLIS, like when you look at it as like, who is SOLIS and what would it look like to you? I had a friend that's an interior designer, and she was like, let's talk about SOLIS. Like when you visualize it as a person, what does it look like to you? And I'm like, I hate to say it, but it's kind of me. It's like, I love the idea of clean. Like I love the clean lines of the product. And then just displaying that and being, I love the science side. Like I love to nerd out on the germs. Like it's such a key thing. But it's like, do people want to see that on social media? Like, I'm like, but people watch pimple poppers. Like,
yeah.
There's a niche there's people for every niche. I think that I think the one thing would be, it would be really hard for me to be somebody I'm not. And for SOLIS, and because you are basically the founder, and then you see it in all aspects, you're looking at it being like, what part of this isn't me? And you kind of want to take those pieces away, just because you can never truly implement the things that aren't embodying what you feel like are the values and foundations of your company too. The same way as you as a person, like you cannot, dress a certain way and be like, yes, I'm gonna be this. And you're like, this is so not me. I don't wear color. Why do I continue to purchase it? Forcing something that isn't like, it's just not right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that inauthentic piece that we were talking about a little bit earlier too, right? Like you have to stay true to yourself, stay true to your brand, and if it's the easiest thing for customers to spot when it's not, right?
Yeah, they can smell it right away.
100%.
Yeah. And they like level of distrust, and so it's like you already started this like conversation like poorly, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you ever received any feedback that maybe didn't sit well, or you didn't expect, or kept you up at night?
So I feel like growing up with three brothers, I heard it all. And then growing up with parents that that operated a business, like you hear it all. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was actually from my dad, where you'll always be the boss's daughter. So you can like have friends within the salon. I think in the early, like when I first started, probably like 25 years ago, it was like a different dynamic, a different industry for sure. There was a level of like, you're there and we're here because like you're essentially like attached to the employer, but you're not, because you're still a person. There's still like levels of conversations you can have and trust you can build. I think that my dad taught me was like, today's a day. It might have been rough. The girls might have not been nice to you, but tomorrow's a different day, and we're going to treat them exactly the same way with like a level of kindness and a level of like respect that you have, because it's like in one ear out the other. Tomorrow's totally different. And then I think in order to survive, I think that's what it took for you to build a business with like 3 stores. You have like over 20 employees. It becomes, you have to sort of understand them, meet them where they are, and know that it's not personal. Sometimes it's just situational, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's that's kind of how it goes.
Knowing that everybody has their own experience and they're all going through their own thing. And it's okay.
Yeah. So I think for me, when it comes to like the advice, it's like you grow up with siblings that tell you fun stuff and they tease you a lot. And I think that I like that feedback. That's how I grow, because I want you to tell me what's wrong. If you tell me what's really good with it, it's like, that's nice. But it's also like, being a natural, like I'm always wanting to learn. Tell me what's wrong and then we can fix it. Or I'll actually tell you like where it might be wrong, or like I'll kind of like rationalize that in my head. Sometimes I don't like the way it's said to me, for sure. So I do stay up at night thinking about, that could have been said a little bit differently. But at the same time, it's like I receive the criticism pretty well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think growing up with 3 brothers like grew your resiliency a little bit more than
Yeah,
maybe?
Yeah, of course. We were doing crazy stuff. Like, one of my brothers lit the house on fire once. So yeah, you start to be really resilient, and you start to like do creative things. And yeah, we were like mowing the lawn before I could see past the lawnmower. So like there are things that you do that I think growing up with 3 brothers, like we just, I don't know, threw ourselves on bikes and like ran around the area. I think we were really lucky to grow up in those years, yeah.
Do you think anybody can be an entrepreneur, or do you think it takes like a certain type of person or personality trait or anything like that?
Gosh. So I used to think that anyone could be an entrepreneur, and I used to always like encourage when I was managing the Shaughnessy location. I would always try to do it, but then, I read like this book, I think it was like Good to Great, where it's like, you cannot push someone that isn't, like you have to have the right people on the bus, number 1. And then number 2, it's like, if they're really, really good at something, don't get them to do something that they're really not a good fit for. So I think there are people and opportunities in certain areas that are good. So I don't think that entrepreneurship is for everyone. I think that there's, key traits and characteristics that you need to have in order to be one. And then I think it's this level of resiliency and like crazy ideas and just leaping for it, but also understanding like, yeah, the risks are high, but the rewards could be great.
Mm-hmm. The right people on the bus.
Yeah.
Diving into that's so key, especially when you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These every single individual plays such a huge role, right? And one bad apple can ruin a lot. How have you gone about kind of expanding your team, and what are those? I know we talked a little bit about it earlier, but specifically, what are the characteristics that you look at beyond the technical to ensure that they are the right fit?
I think one of the key pieces that we have is that they have this, like, they are technical in their area, but they're also, they're excited. I think that the level of excitement that they have in the conversations that we have, I think the people that we've actually hired are the ones that we've met randomly, either whether at like tech events or they're our friends of ours, but like we have these wild conversations and we have great ideas and stories. And like, we obviously don't pursue all of them. But I think the people that have the best, the best like solutions, or I think those are the ones that we realized we need to have them on our team. I think it's a natural feeling. And I think in terms of adding new people to the team, it's a matter of like, we just invite them over and we see how they like interact with each other. Cause you'd never expect, like I did not expect that our marketing, social media, like gal is gonna be interacting with our, MBA developer so beautifully. And like the conversations that they're having, you're like, I would never think that these two would be that they would actually have such a nice relationship and friendship that they discuss SOLIS on all aspects and then circle back into like their own key areas of interest. Yeah, it's really cool. So we just invite them over.
Totally. And like I love that you said it's just natural, right? Because I think that's so important too, that the different departments should be able to interact freely like that and kind of learn and grow from each other and take things from one aspect and make sure it's cohesive in this other aspect of the business.
Yeah, I think it's really key. I think for us, when we started to notice that people, so each one of our team, because everyone's doing such a unique thing, right? You want to we're hiring in such a diverse area. So you have the mechanical engineer helping us with the biosensor. You also have like a social media person, but you also have a developer that's developing the back end and the software aspect part of it. So what you want to do is like each person, when you have them in their own silo, it's really hard for them to see the full picture. And they're kind of sometimes wondering like, where is the end and where are we actually bringing this to market? When are we introducing this? Whether it's B2B or B2C, when does this happen? So allowing them to visualize and see where they're like, so that they also can feel like they've accomplished something. I think when we bring them all together and each person's talking about the aspect, I think it was really interesting to see like social media and dev basically be like, oh, that's why she wants me to do it this way. Like, that's why this is the project plan. And this is where it connects. And I think when they have this full picture and this understanding, it's like they know that they can go back into their space and see the outcome and kind of feel really confident about it. And then also having the other side to like interact with and be like, if I build it like this, would you be able to like, how do we present this to the user? So it was really cool to see.
I love that you mentioned that. I think it's super unique that, without that full picture, without understanding how all of the pieces fit together, you're missing something. Or what you can see as well is that people that don't see the big picture can, they're not motivated to do their part of their piece of the puzzle because they don't know how it fits into the larger scale. Right?
Yeah, and I think for us, exactly that. So I think for us, what was really key was actually having like monthly get-togethers. So we'll have like a Friday that everyone kind of like comes in for pizza, and then it's like a work day. It's a normal work day, but then they come in and it's like we actually kind of have this, okay, work is over. We're gonna like now just chat about cool stuff, and then all of us can kind of see like what each of us is building. And if we don't want to talk about work, we don't have to talk about work. We can just chill because I really do love these people. I probably shouldn't say that to some of them because they're like, that's an HR problem waiting to happen. And so it's like, stop saying you love them. I was like, okay, I really like what you're doing.
But they should be your friends, right?
Yeah,
like you're with
yeah.
these people every day. Like I think that's so key as well. Obviously there should be a line, there needs to be a line for legal reasons, but I think that's healthy that you're friends with your
there's a level of camaraderie. I think that what are you building if you're not building it with people, right? I think that's like we go places together. I think I've really been built on that model. And then with growing up with parents that owned, hair salons, it was like my dad sees each of the stylists here like as his own. So I think when he doesn't, like he yells at me the same way he yells at everybody else, right? Like, I mean, he doesn't yell, but like he obviously talks to us the same way. He like, the level of like, I'm not favored in any way. So I think that I try to implement that as well because it's like, there's a level of camaraderie. There's obviously going to be some differences, but I think that we go places further together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from?
Oh gosh. So Sol, S-O-L, was like a sun, right? We're using UVC tech, and then Lis, like it was kind of like less SOLIS, and then it was spelled a bit different, and then we were hiking one day, and I'm like, God, it just sounds so like discounty. Like I don't like it like that. I think it was just a bridge between the two technologies. I wanted it to be something a little bit simpler. I didn't want it to be my name just because of trademark issues, and I also wanted to be able to like leave it and not it be completely attached to me, right? You want this child to grow up and go explore the world somewhere else. So that's how it kind of came about. And then I think I remember being like, okay, well, we got to simplify this. It's got to look a lot cleaner and cut and look good with like the font that I wanted to use. So that's kind of how SOLIS came up. It's like SOLIS, like it's using the sun and it's like, reducing, for the planet, for the people, for it all. Yeah.
Love it. Sustainability is a big thing, obviously. That's kind of where the whole idea stemmed from. How do you continue to like ensure that, you know, everything that you do, from the production to across the board, how do you look at sustainability?
So sustainability, even just like being manufactured in Canada and then also having like, let's say our injection molders and airdrie, like those were really key pieces for us. Like our footprint was really important. And then building so that SOLIS was actually modular. So if you buy SOLIS today, we wanted the next iteration where it is able to analyze to actually be able to be placed on top of your existing SOLIS. So we didn't want you to be able, like we didn't want our first customers to actually experience this like, oh, I should have just waited for the next version, where it's like, no, we're going to ship you out the technology so that you can actually just implement it right into your unit. So there's key pieces where we want it to be, whether it's like geographical, and then whether it's, like the actual product itself. And then the other piece was about reducing the single-use application, like the amount of garbage that we produce. Like we're one of the biggest industry waste contributors. So how is that in any way contributing to like the beauty space? Like it's not beautiful in any way. So how do we actually like protect our environment, our planet, our people based on like what's actually being utilized properly on your skin, what's really beneficial to you? And then on top of it, putting it into the profit margins of the business, because like we spent so much money on sanitation in the past, and then throughout COVID, it's like all these other extra requirements and all these, because we really truly understood at that point like what it meant to be antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral, and our customers know that. So we really try to implement these key pieces, but in doing that, you're actually producing a lot of waste. So how do we actually get you to like save more, reuse like the existing material that you have, and then experience new technologies by just having modular products.
COVID obviously was not good for anybody. Mm-hmm. However, I'm curious as to the results of COVID being, well, some of them being, that people care more about sanitization and cleanliness and that sort of thing. Do you think that new mentality for some, I suppose, will help you?
I think it really helped because it like leveled the education piece. So people, like I didn't have to actually spend time in the marketing space of actually educating the consumer of like what the difference was, right? A lot of times you just don't know how to do that. But when it was like throughout COVID, it was like people now know the difference. They know how things are transmitted. They know exactly what sort of like the responsibility is from them, what the responsibility is for us as business owners, what that looks like. And so that really helped us because it kind of like already opened the door, and then we just had to like come through in this space. I think one of the other industries, like the sub-industries is the barbershop, is like having their first, they're really keen on sanitation far more than like the regular hairstylists. And it's just purely a part of the culture, which I really appreciate. I think their adoption was really important to us too. So, yeah.
How do you manage your time? Being a full-time business owner, you have a lots on the go. What does that look like? And do you have tactics to ensure that you're kind of staying true to yourself and giving yourself time too? You've mentioned hiking and that sort of thing, which I think is key to fresh ideation and looking back at things.
Yeah, I think spending time away from your business is really keen. Sometimes you stop doing that and realize, like, I think my last year's goal was like not to work so much, not to work every day, because you can be working every day, but it's just for the sake of working, as opposed to, listen, I have like 2 hours to do this. So I try to like time limit myself. So that's a matter of like, is it time blocking? Is that what it's called? Yeah, so it's time blocking. So I started getting really good at that, and then also saying yes to certain things and saying no to others, like not attending every tech conference or not, participating in certain things, or even if I do, I show up, I do like 40 minutes and then I'm out. So being really structured in that respect was really keen. And then I think a lot of family stuff, instead of saying no, I said more yes. So it's like, okay, I've already agreed that I'm going to go to this dinner. So that means that I have to be done everything or what I think is important in this time frame. So I think that's, even putting those restrictions on when you have that stress. I heard it somewhere. I think someone was like, work like you're about to go on vacation. and then you'll get everything you need done, because you usually do. Like you run around with your head cut off. Like you just run around like a chicken getting it all done, but you do it.
Because you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You're going to leave. Your flight's at 6, right? So you got to go.
Having those boundaries is necessary, right? For both aspects of life. Hey, I need to get this done for work, or hey, I need to make this dinner. I think where people, it gets hard is saying no, and it sounds like you figured it out. Was that something that came naturally, or was it hard to kind of learn to say no?
It was really hard to say no. Yeah, and it was really hard to kind of like explain. Like we used to do family dinners on Sunday, and it's really hard. Sunday is really tough I found it very tough for me. I found it like it was really daunting. So we started shifting the family dinners to like maybe Friday night or Saturday night, so that there was a bit more grace. And then in doing that, so it wasn't like you were saying no. It was like you just needed a level of understanding with the people that you care about most. And I can't do this time, but like even suggesting, so not saying no, but more saying like, how about this other time? And I always found, I always used to say yes. And then it was like, wait, this doesn't work for me. I'm so uncomfortable here. And this is like, I'm here, but I'm not really here. And I don't want that experience. I want to actually spend time with like my family and friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the hardest thing, but when you can justify it, right, and you know what you want and where your time should be based on your own values and your business values, then it becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
When it comes to success, what does that look like for you?
What does that look like?
What does success mean to you?
I think just like having a team, working with a team that is so proud of what they've built, because I clearly didn't build this by myself. I think, being able to support like a family and a community, I think that would be really successful. I don't think obviously there's a level of monetary because you want to like pay your team. But aside from that, I think it's just a matter of like being proud of what you built and leaving. When someone says your name, you want to kind of leave that level of legacy. It's like, no, I like her. She's weird, but I like she's okay.
Weird. Yeah. You say weird. Why is
that?
Yeah,
I think I'm naturally kind of weird. I think, there's just conversations and things that you're interested in. I think naturally everyone has a bit of their quirks, and I appreciate that in everyone.
So. Leaning into that makes it you, right?
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. If you were to give yourself a piece of advice, when you were starting out, that you've learned along the way, but you wish you knew at the beginning, what would that be?
Piece of advice that I learned along the way. Ask for help. I think one of the key pieces, like you can go further together. And also, fleshing out, like you can have, like read the fine print sometimes. I think that's one of the key things, or even asking for more. Not necessarily asking for more, but asking, like, for example, like deadlines, is this going to be completed then? What happens then? So learning certain key pieces of understanding how businesses operate and how to best kind of like position yourself too. So I think, asking for help and then read the fine print.
What do you mean by read the fine print?
I think read the fine print and like, when we're manufacturing, I think there's like, the deadlines kind of get extended and there's a level of grace. I think there's also times of like when this becomes really detrimental to your business and your brand. And I think that I didn't grow up like that. I always grew up with, there's always, things will get worked out, but there's times where things don't get worked out. And so there needs to be like a hard line. And I had to learn a piece of that. So I think that's like read the fine print in terms of not necessarily contractually, but just in terms of the agreements and conversations you're having. Sort of read into sort of the promises and for both sides. Yeah.
There's been a bit of a theme of like asking for help and the network and community effect and that sort of thing. And I want to lean into kind of the communities that you've been a part of a little bit. And I know that you've gained immense value from them. And it's becoming more of a thing, through conversations that we're having on this show and beyond, but that the importance of community and the importance of networking, as you mentioned as well. What results have you seen from being parts of these communities that ultimately are just there to help you, first of all, educate you, and then all these people become resources as you continue to grow?
I mean, for SOLIS specifically, it was incredible because as soon as I tapped into like the Alberta Catalyzer platform Calgary, it was like, I didn't realize how big it was. And then at the same time, I didn't realize how helpful everyone was. And it was like this comfort level of being able to ask for help and actually seeing proper results. Like you were not being misguided. You were actually being like, you know what, I have the right person for you. And they'll, follow up, and like you just watched your community in that aspect grow. And I think even between founders, I think when we were, a group of 12, it was like troubleshooting each other, but not quite getting ourselves involved in that business. It was just a matter of like, here's my resource, like you should totally use them. I found them very helpful in this X, Y, and Z. They're, budgeted really well. And I think with the advisors, it was a matter of like, okay, what sort of messaging? How can we hone this? I think those sort of, those people that like offered that help, it's like you almost want to give it back in return as well. So I grew up under the premise of, I don't know how I did this, but I like mentored for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And then I was mentoring for In From the Cold. And then again for, a couple other like Canadian Blood Services. It was like but in offering those, volunteering spots, it's like those are the moments that I was like happiest. I found like it was the busiest time of my life, but it was actually kind of the most happiest, fulfilling times of my life. I think I've just you want to be in the areas where you can actually see the results. And I think just seeing people in better positions and just enjoying, like being part of someone's like best part of their day. I think naturally for the hair salon, that's our goal. And finding that in other areas like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, In From the Cold and other areas too.
Do you feel like giving back just comes naturally to you? It sounds like it.
I like it. I think it just makes me happy. I feel like I think I was lucky in life, and I think I want to, give it back. Share that same experience, because it's like, those are the memories you have, right?
Definitely. Mm-hmm. What's next for you? What's next for SOLIS?
Going international. I think that's our big step. So it's actually taking it to full-scale market, entering other markets. We've been really lucky again, like with the trade commissioners, they've been incredibly helpful. We wouldn't have done it without them. So it's those communities and those buildings of like catapulting us into certain areas, positioning us in front of, like having interviews with L'Oreal. Like these are things that you could never, you could have done them, it would have taken us longer, but like being in that position, being supported by the tech and innovation sector was really important to us, and that gave us confidence too, because they've already kind of not troubleshot us, but like stress test our business. And that when we kind of answered all those questions and they felt confident, it's like it gave us even more confidence to go out. And so I think next step is international.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Are there steps that you have to take to get to that and I'm just thinking more so from like a regulation standpoint, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so there's just market entry. I think that's what I say, like hardware is hard. It's very hard because you can build the product and then it's ready for sale, but it's just entering those markets. So I think that we're working in this space. I think it's becoming a little bit easier, but when we talk about like geopolitical situations, we talk about like the tariffs and what those look like and how we want to enter that market, especially for a startup. And what does investment look like as well? And where do we get it?
All the questions.
Yeah, all the questions.
But you have the community to figure it out.
I know, I'm hoping. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Where can we send people to follow along your journey and SOLIS?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Rana Hyatt, and then you can also find us at yoursolis.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rana.
This
has been incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.